And we're live, and I'm super excited about this. Welcome to the Healing Healthcare Authors Tour. Today we welcome a special guest, but before we do that, I'd like to share a few things with you. First of all, a warm welcome from both Dina Redinger and myself, co-authors of the book, Healing Healthcare, Evidence-Based Strategies to Mend Our Broken System. Nurses remain the backbone of healthcare, and little has been done or even studied to remedy a system that is obviously in crisis. If this is not addressed now, humankind will suffer. This book is packed with solutions to the problems that plague our healthcare systems today. These are the problems that lead to troubling sentiments among prospective nurses, to burnout, to just loss of nurses within the system. Nurse leaders share their experiences, their thoughts, their evidence, and their strategies to ensure the health of our healthcare. What you will find within these pages are actionable steps for fixing a system that is currently suffering in silence. We must collectively and individually get this book into the hands of those making the decisions. Before we start, I want to acknowledge you. We want to thank you for joining us today. We have viewers from across the globe. Feel free to use the chat and let us know where you're from. Dina, over to you.
Well, today we want to welcome Joe Tai, whose chapter, Creating a Culture of Emotional Safety in Healthcare, is part of our workforce section. Joe, we're pleased to have you on our show today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and you've got this incredible chapter. And a little bit about your background. The renowned founder of the Values Coach, Joe is best known for his work in positive cultures of ownership. He created the 12 Core Action Values, a 6-module course on values-based life and leadership skills. In some circles, he's best known for the Pickle Challenge, for a more prospective workplace environment, and for the catchphrase, proceed until apprehended, from the Florence Prescription. Joe earned his master's in healthcare administration from the University of Iowa and MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And wow, Joe, we're so glad you're here. So I'm going to start with our first question. Why join us in the first place? Tell us what motivated you to be part of our journey on healing healthcare.
Well, a couple of things. One is because it's such an important topic right now. I completely agree that I've been in healthcare for more than 40 years, and I've been hearing the term healthcare crisis every year, every one of those 40 years. And this is the first time I really think it's warranted. And the second reason is, how could I not join this incredible group that you've brought together to create this book? I mean, it's such an honor to be on the panel with these incredible healthcare nursing leaders.
Yeah. It's powerful. I can tell you, just this collective knowledge is it's amazing. It truly is. And what's the best thing about the whole book is that, you know what, the answers are in there. They're in there. So over to you, Sharon.
Thanks. And these are answers that everyone is seeking. So Joe, you're known as the Values Coach, and a lot of what you have written deals with values and culture. I know that you also have a new book with our other contributing author, Bob Dent. Can you tell us a bit, please, about your chapter and also about your new book? Please share it.
Sure. The book is actually not completely new. It's a third edition of Building a Culture of Ownership in Healthcare, published by Sigma. And the reason we did a third edition, which we really hadn't intended to do, is because COVID and its aftermath have created so many cultural challenges that we felt we had to update the book with what are the things we've learned about managing culture in a crisis? What are the things we've learned about helping sustain emotional strength, helping to deal with burnout and PTSD and moral injury, which are 3 different things as we describe in the book. So that's why we did the second book, or the third edition of this book.
Right. And I have a copy of the second, which I've enjoyed tremendously. So as an owner of the second, should I run out there and get the third as well? Should I?
Of course.
Log on to Sigma's site now? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, seriously, we also included several new models. When I wrote the book about the DAISY Foundation, sort of a case study. I created a growth impact model, which looked at their growth in terms of scope and scale, the impact they've had globally in terms of reach and depth. And in the third edition, Bob and I showed how to use that model in any organization, both retrospectively to understand where you are, but prospectively as a strategic planning tool. How do you want to grow? What kind of impact do you want to have? So we included a number of new models that are not in the second edition.
And I think that what you have demonstrated, you and Bob both in your work, as well as you in this chapter, is the whole concept of aligning values with people.
Mhm.
It's fine to align values with business, but if the two values do not align, and you're not looking at your people and looking out for your people, your vision perhaps is in the wrong place, and maybe your culture needs a reboot.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think the number one reason people end up leaving is not for more money, not even because of the relationship with their boss, which is what the research shows, but it's a disconnect between their values at a personal level and the values of the organization. And one of the
Exactly.
best investments any organization can make is number one, take the statement of values off the wall. You know, most organizations have boilerplate. It's, you know, I care, you know, integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, excellence. Take it off the wall and ask, are these really authentic? Does this differentiate us from other organizations? Are we using these values to inspire people to recruit and retain? And the second thing they can do, which most organizations don't, is help individuals become more clear about their personal values. You know, if you're in healthcare, you have good, solid values almost by definition, but it's a very rare individual who has taken the time to create a statement of personal values, who, you know, once a week sits down and says, okay, am I living these values? What can I do to better live these values? And investing in people with that sort of education is one of the best ways to create coherence between personal values, what's important to me, and organizational values. What does the organization say is important to them?
Wow, I think you raise a really strong point. What do you think, Dina?
Yeah, you know, it kind of wraps around some of the things that you brought up in the chapter in the book, and those were some of the strategies. And there was 6 strategies that you mentioned in the book, and I'd like to kind of circle back and, you know, the 6 of them. Is there one in particular that just really you think really hits a nerve? If you were going to tell our listeners today one strategy that you've just got to hammer home and get it right today to make a difference for today or tomorrow, what would that be?
I think I would focus on the overarching theme of you need to create a culture of emotional safety. You know, we've spent a long time working on psychological safety. People like Amy Edmondson have done outstanding research, but psychological safety is about the organization. Psychological safety says if I make a mistake or if I see a problem, I can report it without fear of retribution or shame or punishment. But it's about it's keeping the organization safe. Emotional safety is feeling like I'm being protected by the organization. And I think that's where we have really fallen down, especially during and after the pandemic. We have not done a very good job of creating a culture of emotional safety. And things like real-time peer-to-peer support. That's one of the things that I've heard from the hospitals that we work with that have done the best job through COVID and the aftermath. They have created mechanisms for real-time. I don't have to wait 2 weeks to go to EAP. There's somebody I can get to right now who's had some sort of training, the healing the healer sort of training. Organizations that do a better job of celebrating, which is why I'm such a huge fan of the Daisy Foundation, because they have made a science of meaningful recognition
Exactly.
for nurses, but it's been copied by, you know, the Bee Award, the Sunflower Award, the Rose Award, all these others.
I want to ask one question to kind of follow up with all of this. So we talk about emotional safety, we talk about psychological safety. I'd like for you to speak about the vulnerability of leaders to be able to see it, because sometimes it's hard to get past that chasm, you know? So what would you say to a leader who may not be quite as aware of the impact that they have with that place of being vulnerable, because I think that's where a lot of psychological and emotional safety comes from, is the vulnerability of a leader to say, you know what, I'm human too. We're all hurting here, right? So speak to that just a little bit, if you don't mind, Joe.
Sure. One of the things that strikes me in the organizations that did really well during COVID and those that struggled was the visibility of leaders. You know, leaders worked from home, they Zoomed in. The organizations that did really well, the CEO, CNO, COO, they put on masks, they put on gowns, they showed up in the intensive care unit, they showed up in the emergency department, they showed up at 7 o'clock to talk to the people in food service. They were there, and they didn't just come in and say, you know, with their checklist, they really asked people, how are you doing? They really listened, and they responded to the concerns people had. And to me, it's really hard to be vulnerable remotely. It's really hard for people to connect with you if you're not physically
Right.
there with them.
Yeah.
And the second thing I'd say is, you know, we do all these surveys. In my culture assessment survey, there's a question, are you happy with patient satisfaction scores? Without exception, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, the dominant response is, I don't know, unsure. And that's because we're not sharing that information. You know, we collect it, but we're not telling people, this is how you're doing, this is what you could do better.
Right. Yeah. Fear can be a driver, can't it?
Absolutely.
Sharing, you know, so back to you, Sharon.
I can't wait to reread your chapter, Joe. First of all, thank you so much for being with us. We truly, truly appreciate it. You are one of our most valued contributing authors, and we really appreciate all that you've done, how you stepped up to the occasion. You were eager to get started. You handed your work in, and I cannot wait for others to really hear and see what it is you have to say. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This is again a weekly series. We are interviewing all of the contributing authors of Healing Healthcare, Evidence-Based Strategies to Mend Our Broken System. Please join us again next week on LinkedIn Live, and we look forward to sharing the book with you as soon as it's available. Thanks again. Thank you, Joe, for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you. It's a
Thanks, Sharon.
pleasure.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.